Cemeteries are meant to be places of peace, where the dead rest quietly beneath the earth and families come to remember them. But in Michigan, some graveyards refuse to stay silent. Across the state, from Detroit's historic burial grounds to the lonely cemeteries hidden deep in the forests of the Upper Peninsula, people whisper of strange lights, phantom figures, and voices that echo long after midnight. These are places where shadows move on their own, where headstones seem to shift when no one is looking, where visitors feel icy hands on their shoulders and hear footsteps crunching in the gravel, even though no living soul is near. For centuries, tales of hauntings, restless spirits, and eerie legends have surrounded Michigan's cemeteries, making them some of the most feared and fascinating locations in the Midwest. Tonight, we open the gates to these graveyards after dark. We'll walk among the tombstones, step into the chilling silence, and uncover the terrifying stories that keep the dead restless. These are the 15 most haunted cemeteries in Michigan, where the line between the living and the dead feels dangerously thin. Number 1. Elmwood Cemetery, Detroit. Elmwood Cemetery is one of Detroit's oldest burial grounds, dating back to 1846. At first glance, it's breathtaking, with rolling hills, Gothic-style monuments, and massive oak trees that seem to watch over the graves. Many of Detroit's most powerful figures are buried here, from Civil War generals to politicians and wealthy industrialists. But with such a long and storied past, it's no surprise that Elmwood has become one of the most haunted places in the state. Visitors often report hearing whispers drifting through the trees when no one is nearby. Some have described the sound of boots crunching on the gravel paths, as though soldiers still patrol the grounds. This makes sense, since Elmwood was used as a burial site for soldiers during the Civil War. People have even claimed to see full-bodied apparitions in tattered uniforms, standing silently among the headstones before vanishing into thin air. Others describe a chilling presence near the older sections of the cemetery. Cold spots appear suddenly, even on warm summer nights. Paranormal investigators have recorded unexplained electromagnetic activity and caught voices on EVP recordings, faint but clear enough to make out desperate phrases like, "Help me," and "Don't go." Perhaps the most unsettling reports involve the crypts. Several visitors claim to have seen shadow figures moving inside the mausoleums, even when the gates are locked. Some say they felt invisible hands brush against them or tug at their clothing as if the dead are reaching out, unwilling to be forgotten. Elmwood Cemetery is more than a historic resting place. It is a space where history refuses to stay buried. For those brave enough to walk its grounds after dark, the silence can feel alive, filled with unseen eyes watching from the shadows. Number 2. Forest Hill Cemetery, Ann Arbor. Tucked away in Ann Arbor, Forest Hill Cemetery is more than a burial ground. It is a place where the history of the University of Michigan is carved into the stone markers that rise among the trees. Established in the 1850s, it became the resting place for many of the university's earliest professors, students, and local leaders. On a bright day, the cemetery feels like a serene park. But when the sun sinks and the shadows stretch long, the atmosphere changes into something much more unsettling. For decades, visitors have reported seeing strange lights moving between the headstones. They flicker like lanterns carried by unseen hands, sometimes darting through the air, other times hovering over the graves of long-departed academics. Paranormal researchers who have investigated the site often describe these orbs as intelligent, reacting to movement or even appearing when certain names are spoken aloud. The whispers are perhaps the most unnerving. Students who dared to walk through the cemetery late at night claim they've heard soft voices carried in the wind, reciting words they cannot fully make out. Some insist the sounds resemble lectures, as though professors from the 19th century continue teaching long after their earthly classes ended. Others describe their names being spoken in hushed tones, followed by the eerie feeling of being followed until they exit the gates. Apparitions have also been reported. The most common sightings involve a man in old-fashioned academic robes standing among the graves before fading away. On rare occasions, groups of students have described seeing a woman in Victorian dress, believed to be the spirit of a young student who died tragically before completing her studies. Her figure is often seen seated quietly on a bench or near her grave, staring out into the darkness as though still mourning the life she lost. Many paranormal investigators believe the restless energy of Forest Hill Cemetery is tied to the intense emotions of its residents. Professors who dedicated their lives to knowledge, students who died too young, and families who endured grief in silence. Some say these spirits linger because their stories were left unfinished, their ambitions and dreams buried too soon. Number 3. Woodlawn Cemetery, Detroit. Woodlawn Cemetery in Detroit is no ordinary burial ground. Founded in 1895, it quickly became the final resting place of the city's most prominent families. Politicians, industrialists, and cultural icons were laid to rest here, their mausoleums towering like miniature mansions of stone. On the surface, it feels like a museum of wealth and power carved in granite. But beneath that grandeur, Woodlawn carries a darker reputation. Many who have entered its gates at night tell stories of phantom carriages and shadowy figures that roam among the elaborate tombs. One of the most chilling legends speaks of a black horse-drawn carriage that appears on moonlit nights. Witnesses describe hearing the sound of hooves striking against the gravel paths long before the carriage comes into view. When it does appear, it moves silently, the wheels turning without a sound. Some say it carries a headless driver, while others have claimed to see pale, veiled passengers staring blankly out the window before vanishing into thin air. The apparition is often reported near the mausoleums of Detroit's wealthiest families, almost as if the dead are taking one last ride through the city they once ruled. Shadow figures are another common report. Visitors and groundskeepers alike have seen tall, human-like shapes darting between gravestones or standing motionless in the distance. These forms never make a sound and disappear the moment someone approaches. Paranormal investigators believe the shadows may be tied to individuals who never left behind their obsessions with power and status. Even in death, they linger, guarding their wealth, their family plots, and their legacy. The cemetery is also home to subtler hauntings. Strange cold spots have been reported even in the height of summer. Some visitors claim to hear whispers, the faint sound of conversations carried on the breeze as though the city's elite are still holding private gatherings in the afterlife. There are also accounts of unexplained lights glowing faintly inside mausoleums, long after closing hours. Perhaps the most unsettling reports come from those who stumble upon the phantom carriage. They say time seems to slow, the air grows heavy, and their senses dull as if the world itself has been pulled into another era. When the vision fades, they are left with an overwhelming feeling of dread and the certainty they have glimpsed something not meant for the living. Woodlawn Cemetery reminds Detroit that wealth and prestige offer no escape from death's grip. And in the quiet hours of night, the carriages roll, the shadows move, and the city's past refuses to stay buried. Number 4. Oak Hill Cemetery, Pontiac. Oak Hill Cemetery in Pontiac is one of Michigan's most unsettling burial grounds. Established in the mid-1800s, it holds the remains of soldiers, politicians, pioneers, and generations of families who built the city. But the cemetery's fame comes not from its history, but from the terrifying stories whispered by locals, tales of a ghostly woman in white and the chilling screams that echo through the night. For decades, visitors have reported seeing a pale figure drifting among the tombstones. She appears most often on foggy nights, wearing a flowing white gown that shimmers in the moonlight. Some describe her as a bride searching for her lost groom, while others believe she is mourning a child buried in the cemetery. The most unnerving detail is her face, or rather, the absence of it. Witnesses say when they get close enough to see her clearly, her features blur into a hollow, lifeless void. Many turn and flee before they can find out more. The woman in white isn't the only haunting that grips Oak Hill. Residents living near the cemetery have reported hearing blood-curdling screams cutting through the darkness after midnight. These screams are so sharp and filled with terror that many mistake them for a real person in danger. Police have been called on multiple occasions, only to find the cemetery empty and silent. Paranormal investigators suggest the sounds may be the echoes of violent deaths tied to Pontiac's turbulent past, perhaps souls who suffered tragic ends and never found peace. Other strange phenomena are common here too. Cold gusts of air sweep across the grounds even on windless nights. Visitors describe feeling watched, their hair standing on end as they walk between graves. Photographs taken at Oak Hill have captured misty shapes and glowing orbs hovering near certain tombstones. Some have even caught what appears to be the outline of the woman in white standing at a distance. Legend says if you dare to call out to her after midnight, the woman in white will appear near the central hill of the cemetery. But those who claim to have done so warn against it. They describe being overwhelmed by dread, hearing whispers in their ear, and in some cases, being followed by the figure even after they left the grounds. Oak Hill Cemetery is more than a place of rest. It is a place where grief, tragedy, and restless spirits seem to linger, refusing to be forgotten. In the stillness of night, when the screams pierce the air and the woman in white wanders between gravestones, it becomes one of Michigan's most terrifying haunted cemeteries. Number 5. Mackinac Island Cemetery, Mackinac Island. Mackinac Island is known for its beauty, horse-drawn carriages, and historic charm, but hidden behind the island's cheerful facade lies one of the most haunted burial grounds in Michigan. The Mackinac Island Cemetery, nestled deep among the woods and quiet roads, is a place where history and the supernatural collide. This cemetery is unusual because it's not just one graveyard, it's actually part of a cluster of burial sites on the island, including the Catholic Cemetery and the Protestant Cemetery. The most famous, however, is St. Anne's Catholic Cemetery, where hundreds of soldiers, Native Americans, and early settlers are buried. These burial grounds sit on land that holds centuries of conflict, tragedy, and spiritual significance, and many believe the restless energy has never left. Visitors often speak of soldier apparitions patrolling the grounds. Dressed in faded uniforms from the War of 1812, these shadowy figures have been seen standing guard at night, as if still protecting the island. Some even report hearing the sound of marching boots on gravel paths, though no one is there. Others describe disembodied voices giving orders in hushed but stern tones, fading into silence as quickly as they came. But the hauntings are not limited to soldiers. Mackinac Island was once home to thriving native communities, and oral traditions suggest that the land was sacred long before European settlement. Several visitors have reported seeing figures in traditional native dress moving silently between the trees, their presence vanishing into thin air when approached. Some claim to hear drumming or low chanting carried on the wind, though the island is silent otherwise. Paranormal researchers believe these experiences may be tied to the displacement and hardships endured by native people when the island was colonized. Adding to the unease, many have encountered strange lights hovering over graves. These glowing orbs, sometimes blue, sometimes white, drift slowly through the cemetery before disappearing into the forest. Skeptics call them swamp gas or reflections, but witnesses insist they move with intention, as if searching for something lost. The locals also whisper about the restless spirits of island residents. Tales circulate of people buried in shallow, unmarked graves, or bodies moved carelessly when the cemeteries were expanded. Some believe these souls wander in confusion, still seeking peace that was denied to them in life. The eerie silence of the cemetery is often broken by sudden whispers, footsteps on gravel paths, or the feeling of being watched from behind tombstones. One of the most chilling legends is tied to a woman in Victorian clothing often seen walking through the Catholic cemetery. She is described as sorrowful, always looking downward, carrying flowers in her hands. Witnesses say she vanishes the moment you blink or turn away, leaving only the faint scent of roses behind. Visiting the Mackinac Island Cemetery during the day may feel peaceful, but those who have wandered its paths at night tell a different story. The combination of soldiers guarding their posts, native spirits tied to sacred ground, and residents unable to rest make this cemetery one of Michigan's most haunted and unforgettable. Number 6. Evergreen Cemetery, Grand Blanc. Evergreen Cemetery in Grand Blanc may look like an ordinary burial ground at first glance, with its quiet rows of headstones and old trees swaying in the wind. But those who have walked its grounds after dusk will tell you there is something deeply unsettling about this place. It has long been associated with mysterious cold spots, areas where the temperature suddenly drops without explanation. Paranormal investigators report that even on warm summer nights, these icy patches chill you to the bone, leaving a lingering sense that someone unseen is standing nearby. But Evergreen is most infamous for the apparition of a grieving woman, a figure so detailed and lifelike that visitors often mistake her for a real person at first. Dressed in black, she is usually seen wandering among the older graves, her head bowed, her hands sometimes clutching flowers. Witnesses say she moves slowly and silently, her posture heavy with sorrow, as though searching for the final resting place of someone she loved. What makes her so unnerving is how abruptly she disappears. Those who have tried to approach her describe the same chilling sequence. She looks up for just a moment, revealing a pale, expressionless face, and then vanishes into thin air, leaving nothing but silence in her wake. Some even claim to have seen her dissolve into a drifting mist that spreads out across the grass before fading away completely. Local legends suggest she might be the spirit of a woman who lost her family during a tragic epidemic in the 1800s, burying her loved ones here before being laid to rest herself. Others believe she is tied to an unmarked grave, forever searching for peace she cannot find. Whatever the truth, her presence has been documented too often to dismiss. Adding to the atmosphere are countless stories of phantom whispers in the cemetery. Visitors report hearing voices behind them when the grounds are empty, or footsteps crunching on the gravel path though no one is there. Electronic voice recordings have picked up faint cries and fragments of sentences, pleas for help, or names being called into the night. Evergreen Cemetery remains a place of mourning, history, and eerie mystery. Those who wander here after dark often leave with a sense that they were not alone, that someone unseen was walking quietly beside them. And for those unlucky enough to encounter the grieving woman, the memory of her silent sorrow is something they never forget. Number 7. Whitechapel Memorial Park, Troy. Whitechapel Memorial Park in Troy is one of Michigan's most striking cemeteries. With its beautifully manicured lawns, impressive mausoleums, and rows of polished marble headstones, it looks serene and peaceful during the day. But once the sun dips below the horizon, this sprawling burial ground takes on a far more unsettling character. Over the years, countless visitors have spoken of encountering ghostly children darting between the headstones. At first, they seem almost real, small figures running in groups, their laughter echoing faintly in the still night air. But when startled visitors move closer, the children vanish, dissolving into the darkness or fading into the very stone markers themselves. Some have even described hearing the sound of a ball bouncing across the grounds, only for it to stop abruptly, leaving silence hanging heavy in the air. Adding to the mystery are the strange orbs of light that flicker across the cemetery. These glowing spheres are often seen hovering low to the ground, weaving in and out of the headstones as if guided by an unseen hand. While skeptics dismiss them as reflections or insects caught in camera flashes, those who have witnessed them with their own eyes swear they move with intention, almost playfully. Paranormal researchers suggest they may represent the spirits of the children themselves, forever bound to this place and using these lights as a way to manifest their presence. One particularly unsettling story comes from a night security guard who patrolled the grounds. He claimed to have seen a small figure standing by the mausoleum, illuminated by the faint glow of the orbs. As he approached, the figure turned its head toward him, revealing the pale, hollow eyes of a child. In a heartbeat, both the figure and the lights blinked out, leaving the guard shaken and unwilling to continue his shift. Some believe these spirits belong to children buried here during the cemetery's early years, possibly victims of illness or tragic accidents. Others whisper that the laughter and orbs may not be innocent at all, but something far darker using the appearance of children to lure the living closer. Whether spirits of the past or something more sinister, the reports remain consistent. Visitors who enter Whitechapel Memorial Park after dark often leave with an unshakable feeling that playful eyes are watching them from the shadows, and that laughter, faint and eerie, still lingers among the dead. Number 8. Woodmere Cemetery, Detroit. Woodmere Cemetery, founded in 1867, is one of Detroit's most historic burial grounds. Spanning nearly 250 acres, it was originally built as part of the rural cemetery movement, meant to be both a resting place for the dead and a park-like sanctuary for the living. Its peaceful appearance during the day masks something much more unsettling after dark. Visitors report that the cemetery is haunted by Civil War soldiers, their uniforms still tattered, their faces worn with grief. Some say they appear standing solemnly at attention, as if waiting for orders that will never come. Others claim to hear the heavy rhythm of marching boots echoing across the grounds long after the gates have closed. Even more chilling are the whispers of men calling out names, as if searching for lost comrades who never returned home. But it isn't only soldiers who linger here. Stories tell of ghostly mourners, women in long veils, their faces hidden, drifting silently among the headstones. They are often seen kneeling by old graves, their shoulders shaking as though in eternal grief. Witnesses who dared to approach said the figures faded into nothingness the closer they came, leaving behind a cold heaviness in the air. One of the eeriest tales involves the mausoleums that line certain paths in the cemetery. Late-night explorers have reported hearing knocks and scratching from inside, as if something or someone was trying to get out. Paranormal investigators believe the residual energy of grief and unfinished business clings to Woodmere, keeping the mourners here in a never-ending vigil. With its vast history and thousands of souls interred, it's no wonder Woodmere is regarded as one of Michigan's most haunted cemeteries. Every shadow seems deeper, every gust of wind seems to carry a whisper, and those who wander too long often leave with the sense that they are being followed. And if Woodmere leaves you unsettled, the next cemetery is no less chilling. In fact, many say it's home to apparitions that walk openly among the living, as if the barrier between the two worlds has all but vanished. Number 9. Elmwood Cemetery, Shepherd. Not to be confused with the famous Elmwood Cemetery in Detroit, the Elmwood Cemetery in Shepherd, Michigan has its own unsettling reputation. Tucked away in a quiet rural community, this burial ground appears calm and unassuming during the day. Its rows of headstones, surrounded by trees and farmland, give the impression of a peaceful country graveyard. But when the sun goes down, Elmwood reveals a much darker side. Locals speak of disembodied voices that drift across the cemetery at night. Some say the voices sound like conversations, low murmurs that fade in and out, as if the dead are still talking among themselves. Others have reported hearing sudden, loud shouts when no one else was present. A few even claim they've heard their names whispered directly into their ears, though they stood completely alone. Equally disturbing are the reports of glowing figures. Witnesses describe them as human-shaped lights, often pale blue or white, that float slowly between the graves before fading into nothingness. Paranormal investigators who visited the site have captured strange anomalies on camera, misty shapes and unexplained orbs of light appearing in photographs and video footage. Some longtime residents of Shepherd believe the hauntings come from the cemetery's earliest burials, dating back to when the town was first settled. Stories suggest that certain restless spirits never moved on, their energy still bound to the land where their bodies were laid to rest. For those who dare to explore after dark, Elmwood is a place where silence is never truly silent, and shadows seem to breathe. And if glowing figures unsettled you here, the next cemetery will leave you even more uneasy. Number 10. St. Joseph Cemetery, Lansing. In the heart of Lansing lies St. Joseph Cemetery, a sprawling Catholic burial ground that has stood for generations. By day, it feels serene, almost sacred, with rows of crosses and carefully tended graves honoring the faithful. But when night falls, many claim this holy ground becomes one of the city's most haunted locations. For decades, visitors have reported sightings of ghostly priests and nuns moving silently among the headstones. Dressed in dark robes or pale habits, these figures often appear at a distance, gliding between rows of graves as if still performing their sacred duties. Some witnesses describe them holding rosaries, their lips moving in what seems like prayer, while others say the figures vanish into thin air when approached. The cemetery's eerie reputation is strengthened by countless accounts of strange sounds. The soft echo of chanting, the distant toll of church bells when no bell is ringing, and the unmistakable shuffle of footsteps on gravel when no one is there. Paranormal groups who have investigated St. Joseph Cemetery claim to have captured faint Latin prayers on audio recorders and shadowy figures on camera. Many believe these spirits belong to priests and nuns who served Lansing's Catholic community long ago and now remain bound to the cemetery, still watching over their flock even in death. But others whisper that some of these spirits are not peaceful guardians at all. A few visitors have reported overwhelming feelings of dread, as though being silently judged or warned away by unseen eyes. For those who enter St. Joseph Cemetery after dark, the experience is unforgettable. The air grows heavy, the silence deepens, and the sight of a black-robed figure vanishing between the graves is enough to make even skeptics shiver. Number 11. Graceland Cemetery, Grand Rapids. Tucked away in Grand Rapids is Graceland Cemetery, a burial ground that carries an unsettling reputation among locals. By day, it appears peaceful, its historic graves surrounded by tall trees and winding paths. But when night falls, this quiet cemetery transforms into a place of mystery and fear. Visitors often speak of strange lights that dance above the headstones. Some describe them as glowing orbs, flickering in and out like lanterns being carried by unseen hands. Others say the lights move deliberately, weaving between the graves as though guiding or watching. Paranormal investigators have attempted to capture these phenomena, and while some have dismissed them as swamp gas or reflections, many insist the movements are too purposeful to be explained away. But perhaps even more chilling are the reports of phantom footsteps. Countless people have walked the paths of Graceland only to hear the crunch of gravel following close behind. When they stop, the footsteps stop. When they move, the sound begins again. Many who experience this say the unseen presence feels inches away, pressing on the back of their neck, but when they turn around, no one is there. Adding to its haunted reputation, locals whisper about shadowy figures seen lingering near older graves. Some describe a man in old-fashioned clothing who appears and disappears within seconds. Others report feelings of being watched from the treeline, as though the cemetery's past residents are keeping a close eye on the living. For those brave enough to visit after dark, Graceland Cemetery offers an experience that is both mesmerizing and unnerving. The glowing lights, the echoing footsteps, and the ever-present sensation of being followed make it one of Grand Rapids' most haunted resting places. And if the strange lights of Graceland Cemetery weren't enough to stir your nerves, wait until we step into the next graveyard, a place where the dead don't simply watch, but where their voices are said to call out through the night. Number 12. Mount Olivet Cemetery, Detroit. Mount Olivet Cemetery in Detroit is vast, quiet, and steeped in eerie legends. By day, it is one of the city's most prominent Catholic burial grounds, with winding paths, towering monuments, and endless rows of graves. But by night, those same paths take on a far more sinister character. Visitors often describe the overwhelming feeling of not being alone, even when the grounds appear completely empty. One of the most common reports involves unexplained shadows. These figures are seen darting between mausoleums, moving along the tree lines, or appearing suddenly across a walkway only to vanish seconds later. Some describe them as tall, thin shapes that stretch unnaturally against the dim light, while others insist the shadows move with intent, like something actively stalking those who dare to enter after dark. Equally disturbing is the sensation of being followed. Countless accounts describe the sound of soft footsteps trailing behind, only to stop when the witness stops and resume again when they begin walking. Many leave shaken, convinced that whatever lingers here is aware of their every move. Some even claim to have felt cold, unseen hands brushing against their shoulders or tugging at their clothing. Adding to the fear is the sheer size of Mount Olivet. Its labyrinth of roads and paths can disorient even those familiar with the grounds. Some visitors claim that while trying to leave, they find themselves circling the same area repeatedly, as though the cemetery itself is holding them in place. A few go further, saying the shadows seem to guide or mislead them deeper into the darkness. Mount Olivet may be a place of rest for the dead, but for the living, it is one of Detroit's most unsettling cemeteries. Here, silence is never truly silent. Shadows move when they shouldn't, and footsteps echo long after the living have stopped walking. Number 13. Maple Grove Cemetery, Hudsonville. Maple Grove Cemetery in Hudsonville may seem like a quiet rural graveyard, tucked away from the chaos of the cities, but its stillness hides a darker reputation. Unlike the grand, sprawling cemeteries of Detroit or Lansing, this one feels far more intimate, its old headstones surrounded by trees and farmland. Yet, it is precisely this isolation that makes the activity here so unsettling. Visitors often report glowing orbs hovering above the graves at night. These lights drift slowly through the cemetery, sometimes floating low to the ground, other times rising high into the air before vanishing without a sound. Some witnesses describe them as pale blue or white, pulsing faintly like a heartbeat, while others claim they follow intruders as if guiding or warning them. Paranormal investigators have captured photographs of unexplained lights here, strengthening the legend of Maple Grove's mysterious orbs. But perhaps the most frightening stories involve the phantom carriage. Locals whisper of a spectral horse-drawn carriage that emerges on foggy nights, its wheels creaking and hooves striking the gravel with a sound that echoes long after the apparition has disappeared. Some claim to have seen it materialize at the cemetery gates, rolling slowly past the graves before fading into nothing. Others insist they have heard the clatter of iron wheels behind them, only to turn and find the road empty. The origins of the haunting remain a mystery. Some believe the carriage is tied to the 19th century funerals once held here, when caskets were delivered by horse-drawn hearse. Others say it carries the spirits of those who never reached their final resting place, endlessly circling the grounds in search of peace. Whether you encounter the strange orbs or hear the chilling echo of phantom wheels, Maple Grove Cemetery proves that even the smallest graveyards can harbor some of the darkest secrets. Number 14. Riverside Cemetery, Kalamazoo. Riverside Cemetery in Kalamazoo is one of Michigan's oldest burial grounds, established in the mid-1800s. At first glance, it looks like a peaceful place with sprawling lawns, winding roads, and ancient headstones shaded by towering trees. But when night falls, Riverside transforms into something far more unsettling. Many visitors describe hearing whispers carried on the wind as they walk among the graves. The voices are faint, almost impossible to understand, yet persistent, like the murmurs of unseen mourners lingering long after the burial is over. Some say the voices grow louder when you near the oldest section of the cemetery, where the earliest pioneers of Kalamazoo rest. Others report that the whispers seem to follow them, circling around until they leave the grounds. Then there are the shadowy figures. Witnesses claim to have seen tall, dark shapes moving silently between the headstones. At times, these forms appear solid, resembling men or women dressed in old-fashioned clothing. But when approached, they dissolve into the darkness, leaving behind only the rustle of leaves or the chilling sensation of being watched. Paranormal investigators who have visited Riverside say it is one of the most active cemeteries in Michigan, with multiple reports of shadow people appearing on camera and vanishing in the blink of an eye. Some locals believe the hauntings stem from the tragic losses of early settlers, families who endured disease, hardship, and war, their grief echoing through time. Others think the spirits remain restless because of unmarked graves, forever searching for recognition that history denied them. Whether you hear the whispers or glimpse the shadows, Riverside Cemetery leaves little doubt that its silence is only an illusion. Beneath the stillness, something lingers, something unseen. And as chilling as Riverside may be, our final cemetery carries one of the most disturbing reputations of them all, where visitors swear the dead themselves refuse to rest. Number 15. Indian Cemetery, Mackinac Island. High on the bluffs of Mackinac Island rests one of Michigan's most legendary haunted burial grounds, the Indian Cemetery. This sacred site holds the remains of Native Americans, soldiers, and island residents whose lives ended centuries ago. Unlike many cemeteries that sit quietly tucked away, the Indian Cemetery carries with it an air of reverence mixed with unease. Even during the day, the rows of wooden crosses and simple markers give visitors the sense they are stepping onto hallowed ground watched over by unseen eyes. But it is after sunset that the legends come alive. Locals and tourists alike have reported seeing ghostly figures rise from the graves and drift silently through the cemetery. Some describe warriors in traditional dress, walking proudly as though guarding their ancestral land. Others speak of misty shapes that hover among the headstones before vanishing into the trees. The most unsettling accounts tell of shadows moving in groups, as if entire bands of spirits still march together through the night. The cemetery is also tied to strange sounds. People have heard drums beating faintly in the distance and chants carried on the wind, even when no ceremonies are taking place. Some witnesses swear they felt a sudden drop in temperature as they crossed the cemetery gates, as though the spirits themselves were brushing past them in silence. What makes Indian Cemetery particularly chilling is the deep respect and fear it commands. Locals advise against disturbing the graves or speaking carelessly while inside, warning that those who show disrespect risk carrying something home with them. The belief is that the spirits here are not bound to the cemetery, they are guardians of the island, watching, listening, and walking wherever they choose. For many, visiting the Indian Cemetery is both awe-inspiring and terrifying. It stands as a reminder that Mackinac Island is more than a historic tourist destination. It is a place where the past refuses to sleep. And for those who linger too long after dark, the line between the living and the dead may blur in ways they will never forget. From the restless soldiers of Mackinac Island to the whispering spirits of Detroit's forgotten graveyards, Michigan cemeteries remind us that history is never truly silent. These haunted resting places hold more than names carved in stone. They carry echoes of lives once lived, tragedies long past, and mysteries that refuse to fade. The next time you walk through a quiet cemetery path, listen closely. The flicker of a shadow or a chill in the air may be more than your imagination. It may be a reminder that the dead are never too far from the living. Thank you for joining us on this chilling journey through Michigan's most haunted cemeteries. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss another story of haunted places and ghostly encounters. And tell us in the comments, which Michigan cemetery would you dare to visit at night? Until next time, stay curious, stay brave, and remember, some spirits never rest.